Back in 2000, while most of the world was easing into a new millennium, Sierra Leone was on fire, literally and figuratively. A bloody civil war was tearing the West African nation apart, and for one group of British soldiers, things were about to spiral into a nightmare that would test every limit of military resolve. What followed next was a military operation so bold, so surgically precise, and yet so unbelievably risky that even today, Operation Barras is whispered about in military circles with a mix of awe and disbelief. But let's back it up, because the build-up to this daring mission wasn't just about a few soldiers in the jungle. It was about a nation on the brink, a criminal gang with nothing to lose, and a small team of elite operatives who had everything to prove. At the dawn of the 21st century, Sierra Leone was not a place you wanted to find yourself lost in. The country, a former British colony, had been ravaged by almost a decade of civil war, and the brutal rebel group known as the Revolutionary United Front, RUF, was spreading terror like wildfire. Think child soldiers, mass rapes, amputations with machetes, and diamond-fueled warlords drunk on power. The very fabric of society had collapsed. By May 2000, the situation had spiraled so far out of control that the British government had no choice but to act. Initially, it was a limited deployment to evacuate foreign nationals and keep Freetown, the capital, from falling into RUF hands. But as the days passed, the mission changed. British troops stayed behind to support UN forces and train the Sierra Leonean army. It was supposed to be stabilization. What they didn't expect was an all-out hostage crisis that would drag them back into direct combat. August 25, 2000. A routine patrol consisting of 11 soldiers from the Royal Irish Regiment and a single Sierra Leonean liaison drove straight into the lion's den. And this was no metaphor. The patrol mistakenly wandered into the territory of the West Side Boys, a drugged-up, gun-toting militia notorious for their erratic violence. Fueled by rum, heroin, and a bizarre obsession with American gangster culture. What happened next stunned Whitehall. The patrol was surrounded, outnumbered, and forced to surrender. They were taken to the West Side Boys' jungle hideout, a swamp-surrounded village called Gaberi Bana, nestled on the banks of the Roquel Creek. Once inside, the soldiers faced beatings, threats of execution, and brutal psychological torture. This wasn't just a hostage situation. It was a PR disaster waiting to explode. Enter Lieutenant Colonel Simon Fordham, a cool-headed commander with nerves of steel. He didn't sit behind a desk. Fordham went straight to the negotiating table, face to face with armed gang leaders who alternated between threats, drunken rants, and bizarre demands. The West Side Boys, unstable and paranoid, demanded everything from satellite phones to medical supplies. One day calm, the next threatening to kill the prisoners. For Fordham and his team, the mission was painfully clear. Buy time, every second counted. Behind the scenes, the British military was quietly preparing for the worst-case scenario. While the Ministry of Defense kept negotiations going on the surface, a very different kind of operation was unfolding in the undergrowth of Sierra Leone's jungles. Elite units from the Special Air Service, SAS, and Special Boat Service, SBS, were being flown into the country under total secrecy. Their objective was razor-sharp: gather intelligence, map out the enemy camp, identify targets, and wait for the green light. For days, these men lived in complete silence, just meters away from heavily armed, unpredictable militia fighters. They used sound sensors, night vision, and human surveillance to record everything. One of the captured soldiers even managed to pass a hand-drawn map of the enemy compound during a brief meeting, a moment that would later prove critical. Still, despite the diplomatic dance and the intelligence gathering, the situation was deteriorating by the hour. Then came the breaking point. The negotiations collapsed. The West Side Boys were no longer just making demands, they were threatening executions. Intelligence suggested the prisoners could be murdered at any moment. And when you're dealing with drugged-out warlords with zero accountability, it's not a bluff, it's a time bomb. September 10th, 2000. The call was made. Britain launched Operation Barras, a full-scale joint special forces and parachute regiment rescue mission that would unfold at dawn, deep in hostile jungle, with lives hanging in the balance. This wasn't a stealth raid under the cover of darkness. No, This was a full-throttle, guns-blazing helicopter assault, where speed and violence of action were the only ways to win. As the sun broke over the horizon, the silence shattered with the thunder of rotor blades. Chinooks, Lynx helicopters, and Russian-made Mi-24 Hind gunships, borrowed from regional allies, swept over the jungle in a firestorm of flares and rocket bursts. The noise alone was deafening, and that was the point. While most rescue ops rely on silence, this one relied on shock. The Special Forces fast-roped into Gberi Bana like specters of war, racing against the clock to locate and extract the hostages before they could be executed in the chaos. Fighting erupted instantly. Bullets zipped through the trees, and the West Side boys, many of them still drunk or high from the night before, tried to resist. But they were no match for the precision and intensity of Britain's elite. By the time the smoke cleared, all hostages were alive and extracted. Against staggering odds, not a single helicopter was downed, though one British soldier tragically lost his life. But that was just half the operation. Across the creek, at another stronghold called Magbeni, a second British force from 1st Battalion, the parachute regiment landed hard. There was no runway, just swamp. Soldiers jumped from choppers straight into waist-deep mud, wading toward the sounds of gunfire as mortar shells exploded around them. Early in the battle, the Paras lost several key officers to shrapnel, but they pushed on. Their mission? Prevent reinforcements from Magbeni from reaching Gberi Bana, and eliminate any threat to the extraction. The fighting here was intense and personal, room-to-room combat, civilians caught in the crossfire, and sheer grit. In the end, the British forces overran the position, freed additional civilian prisoners, and recovered the original patrol vehicles that had been taken hostage 3 weeks earlier. Operation Barras wasn't just a rescue mission. It was a statement to the world, to Britain, and to warlords everywhere. The West Side boys were annihilated, their leadership dead or captured, their ranks scattered, their myth shattered. Within weeks, their organization collapsed completely. And with that, a major threat to Sierra Leone's peace process was removed. Back home, the soldiers who participated were hailed as heroes. The operation led to an unprecedented wave of gallantry awards, including 2 conspicuous gallantry crosses, one of the highest combat honors in the British military. Every soldier who took part received the Operational Service Medal for Sierra Leone. More importantly, the mission prompted a serious restructuring of UK military doctrine. It highlighted the need for a dedicated Special Forces support group, a unit capable of working seamlessly with SAS and SBS teams in high-risk operations. That unit exists today because of what happened in Sierra Leone. So, why does Operation Barras still matter? Because it showed that Britain was willing and able to deploy lethal force with surgical precision when lives were on the line. It proved that diplomacy and military muscle could work in tandem, and it sent a clear signal that hostage-taking wouldn't be tolerated, even in the most lawless corners of the world. The men who executed that mission weren't just soldiers. They were shadows in the jungle, warriors with a singular purpose. They moved with fury, precision, and discipline, and they changed the course of a conflict in just a few hours. Even today, the echoes of that dawn raid linger over the swamps of Roquel Creek, a testament to what happens when the stakes are highest. And failure is simply not an option. What are your thoughts on Operation Barras? Should modern militaries be more willing to deploy in high-risk hostage situations like this? Drop your take below. And if you want to learn more about military operations, make sure to subscribe and leave a like.